So welcome to both of you.
Morning.
Nice to see you. So lots of different stories around today, but inevitably there's always going to be a few front pages taken up with what Donald Trump's been saying, because it's obviously of great importance at the moment regarding the war in Ukraine. So the Times, Putin doing what anyone else would, says Trump, is the headline.
Yeah, I mean, we had yet another sort of exciting press conference from Trump yesterday, and he came out with these sort of shocking one-liners. So he said that Putin was doing what anybody else would do by intensifying his bombing of Ukraine. I just can't believe that anyone would think that would be true. And I think the reason that Putin has acted in this way is because he's been emboldened by Trump's actions himself. The knock-on effect of not only cutting Ukraine's aid, meaning that they feel much weaker in that sense, meaning it feels like the West is drawing back in their support of Ukraine, cutting intelligence to them, which could have possibly even had knock-on effects to the bombing that we've seen this week and led to more civilian casualties. We don't know what intelligence was being shared, obviously, but cutting off all intelligence to Ukraine in that way is likely to have had severe impacts. And in fact, senior Ukrainian leaders have been saying that they're already feeling the impact of that lack of intelligence. But it's going a step further. And I feel like what we're seeing, especially this week, is really Trump's dislike of Zelensky as a person coming through. He said in the same press conference yesterday, I'm finding it more difficult, frankly, to deal with Ukraine. They don't have the cards. And Politico have been reporting that senior members of Trump's team have actually been meeting with the Ukrainian opposition leaders. So it seems he's meddling more and more in Ukrainian politics to try and oust Zelensky.
There are some extraordinary statements. He also, as you say, talked about how Ukraine was harder to deal with at the moment, and yet mixed messages. Earlier in the day, he talked about possibly introducing tougher sanctions and tariffs on Russia, which some people felt might have been moving in a different direction. So mixed messages as usual, but overall a sense that he's pushing Ukraine a lot harder than he is Russia.
Well, he clearly is. It's not difficult to see what he's doing, but it's difficult to understand. Because if you go back to last Friday, when the remarkable scenes in the White House with Zelensky, Vance,
hard to believe it's only
Trump.
just over a week.
It's only a week. But because Trump is so capricious in everything he does, normally in diplomacy, particularly in diplomacy at this level and this nature and this importance, there are small moves, small advances. Every sentence is nuanced and understood, and there's back-channel discussions. He's obliterated that. So I think trying to read it and trying to make sense, accept what seems to be some placatory move to help Russia, apart from that, it's hard to find any kind of through line as to what he's doing.
Yeah, and who knows what his plans are as far as Russia. He feels like he's concentrating on this minerals deal with Ukraine as a first step. Some suggestion in the Times that he's pushing for tougher conditions on that already. But talks next week in Saudi Arabia with Ukrainian officials. So we'll learn more about the story next week. Well, I'm sure we'll learn all weekend more details of this story. In the meantime, though, Paul, take us to the front page of the Mirror, because this is a story that is on a lot of the front pages, and this is the conviction of 3 spies yesterday at the Old Bailey.
It's the front page of the Mirror. It's also the front page of many other papers. Each one tries to find their line. The Mirror's gone with the honey-trapped spies face jail. I think it links very much, obviously, to the Putin story and the disbelief that we have that Trump should want to side with Putin when there are stories like this alive. You can break it down to 2 things.
Because they were spying for Russia.
They were spying for Russia. They were 3 Bulgarians, and you can break it down between the detail of what they were doing and then the bigger picture. So the detail of what they're doing, which is what the Mirror is focused on, is because there was essentially a love triangle of spies who were going after dissidents and journalists who were disliked by the Kremlin, and they were hired at arm's length to try and find details about these journalists. Some of the conspiracy was to get them out, spirit them out of the country, perhaps kill them. Some of it was to blackmail them for whatever ends. It's not quite clear. But what is clear is that Russia's network of spies, this is not like when Smiley was working with Carla and everything that you think of in the Cold War. obviously that's a fantasy, it's not real. But the point being that in our minds, spies and spycraft has got a certain intelligence to it. This didn't. The Russian network seems so broken that they're having to, at arm's length, hire people, and it's for money rather than ideology.
Sort of contracting out the
Yes.
job to they're saying to sort of criminals and other groups, quite often not Russians, even Bulgarian.
And so the reason that they were caught is because one of them left hundreds, maybe thousands of messages on his phone about what was going on, and when the police found it, the whole of the thing was able to be rolled up. So it just shows that this is, while they're operating, it's perhaps not the way we think of spies operating before. It's not exactly the Cambridge Four.
Working out of a shabby hotel in Great Yarmouth,
Yes.
wasn't it? And Daily Mail picks this story up, and they pose a question in the headline,
Yes.
don't they? Which I always find interesting because we don't know whether we'll actually get the answer
open-ended question, let's say.
in the article.
But yeah, the one thing I will say, I know from the offset, Netflix will probably already be buying the rights to this story. It's so sort of salacious, and as you say, there is love triangles, and there's all these different gadgets and gizmos that they use. But at the end of the day, they still operated for 3 years. It was still a network that was operating across the whole of Europe. And on top of that, we don't actually know the real damage that was done, largely because, with media, MI5 aren't going to be sharing that information. They're not going to want to make us look weak. But we know that they were also spying on German military bases. We don't know what possible information they could have been garnering from there. So although, yes, the front pages there, we can sort of laugh a little bit at them, we don't necessarily know what real damage was done here. And the other thing I should say is that after 2018, the Salisbury poisonings that happened here, we felt very under threat, and we expelled 23 Russian diplomats from the UK, as we should. But now what we're seeing is they're clearly recruiting people from other countries that are already within the EU, that can already travel within that bloc, that isn't, it's a whole new way that they're operating, let's say. And so it's going to be harder to spot them. These people really were hiding in plain sight, doing very normal jobs, going about normal lives. And I think we shouldn't underestimate it too quickly.
I know, and all our focus has been on sort of quite old-fashioned battlefield war in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia. And this is a reminder that there's lots of other ways of carrying out warfare and through espionage and other means.
There is, and just one thing.
Very quickly.
The Daily Telegraph, maybe we'll return to it. The Daily Telegraph has looked at the person they believe is the mastermind behind this.
Yeah, indeed. Done beautifully briefly, because we have run out of time now, but you will be back in the next hour. Lots more to talk about then. For the moment, thanks very much.
Sky News get the full story first.
Is this now?